Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. My name is Afi and I'm back again with another video. This is another book review, chapter review. The book is Real Love in Dating. This chapter is chapter 6. I feel like I haven't done these videos in such a long time. I actually I'm like, I don't know how to film, blah blah blah. Anyway, we're doing chapter 6. If you haven't watched the other ones, I'm going to link them up here. I've done chapter 1 to chapter 5. This book has 9 chapters. So yeah, if you haven't watched the others, just like check those out. If you don't know who I am, my name is Afi. I do a lot of faith-based content. I talk about life, I talk about faith, I talk about school, and I just talk about everything I feel like talking about. This is my little diary. So if you like such content, please make sure to subscribe, give this video a thumbs up if you like it. Don't forget to share with anyone who you feel would benefit from this content. And yeah, so we'll just get started. So, as I said, this is chapter 6. The topic is bumping up the yield, the techniques of dating. If I'm looking down, it's because I have a book, as usual. But this topic is basically just about dating and basically like what you should do when you start dating and stuff like that. And there's a lot of reference to chapter 4 in this chapter. I probably won't mention that, and I'll try to keep this video really short, so make sure you get the book. I'm going to leave an Amazon link down below, then you can get the book and read all the juice. So good. Anyway, so the first part basically just says great dating is a natural result of two people who are willing to be honest and accepting. So it's not like a product of something, it's literally just like a natural result. And actually the guy says great dating is not a technique, it's a natural result of two people who are willing to be honest and accepting of each other. And so it directly goes on to a part that is basically like when not to date basically. And the first thing is when you're empty and afraid. The second is right after a failure of a relationship. And the third is in the middle of a crisis. And the fourth is when you are physically not well. And here he mainly talks about women. If you're PMSing in that moment, don't make the decision to date. Apparently that's not good. Something else he says is do not date until you have enough real love in your life that you have largely eliminated your emptiness and fear. Otherwise, you will be desperate for imitation love. And if you don't know what imitation love is, check out chapter 2. Chapter 2 really goes like in depth on what imitation love is. Chapter 1 talks about what real love is. So just make sure you check those out, because those two concepts are very important throughout the book. And I guess they're also important in life in general. So check that out. Anyway, he basically goes on to talk about questions you should ask yourself before you date. And one of the questions is, do I feel lonely? Another one is, do I worry that I'm not having enough dates? Another one is, do I worry about what my partner will think of me? Another one is, am I looking for someone to make me happy? And the last one is, am I heartbroken about a recently lost relationship? And I guess if the answer to all these questions is yes, or some of them is yes, then don't date. The point is, if you answer yes to any of those questions, please don't date, because you're not ready basically. And then we move on to preparing to look for a partner. And I guess that's basically when do you know that you're ready? We've already talked about it. If you have enough real love in your life, then you're good enough to get into a relationship, because a relationship is not supposed to be your happiness, it's supposed to add to your happiness. The next thing he actually talks about, which I found was so interesting, is online dating. And I feel like he really talks about the idea of how when you go for online dating is a good idea basically. He's like, if you think about the idea of meeting someone, you are more likely to find someone online than you are in person. And I think either way you can find people, because it's friends of friends or stuff like that. Because I remember actually getting to a place where I was asking, where do people make friends? When you're done with the university, you're not making friends in uni anymore. Where are you making friends? Either at work or friends of friends. That's it. If your friends are not introducing you to anyone, then you won't make new friends. So I guess he also brings in this idea of how online sites match you according to the things that make you things that you have in common. right? Which sometimes is not the best way to match. He really does go in depth with the fact of like people are always looking for someone who is like them, like literally it's like you're looking for yourself in the opposite gender or whatever. And he's like, nope, like there's no point of doing that. And something he says is, you're not looking for someone perfect, you're looking for someone headed in the same direction you are. So I guess the idea of like thinking about what your ideals are, what are you looking forward to in life, like where are you thinking to go, like what are your values, that's more important than having things in common. He says, someone diligently working at being honest and unconditionally loving, and who is making consistent progress toward these goals. And a lot of stories he gives in the book, actually, I don't know if it's this chapter or next one, but he talks a lot about people who come to him and they're basically like, oh yeah, I read this book and I thought it was so good, and when I give it to like my partner or like whoever I'm dating at the time, he is either not interested or he is, right? And a lot of times he's like, if this person isn't interested in like reading this book or just like understanding these ideas of real love, then it probably is not going to be a good match. Because if he doesn't have real love in his life, and you don't have to read the book to know about real love, like I feel like sometimes we think like you have to do this thing and that thing and blah blah blah, but sometimes there are just some people who have that ability to genuinely like love people, and they have a good circle and they're just like healthy magically. And so you don't have to read the book, but if you notice that someone doesn't have real love and then you recommend the book and then they're like, oh no, that's not my thing, then you know, like this person is not trying to grow, and do you want to be that person? And I'm gonna just throw this back to, I think it was chapter 3, where I talk about the idea of like climbing up a hill with like a bag of, with like a sack of stones on your back, right? Is it easier to climb with that sack or without it? And so he talks about the idea of like being with someone who has real love being much easier than being with someone who you have to teach real love. So another point that he brings up is the idea of changing the way you see dating. And he says your goal is to find out who is capable of loving you, not necessarily for to make someone like you. I feel like so many times we move around life being so scared of stepping outside ourselves, and we're like, we don't know if this person is gonna like me, like do I need to be like this, do I need to be like that? First of all, we don't even think if we are going to like them. We're always just like, am I gonna be likable? And something important to think about is if you actually like them. But even more than that, I think something else that is important is like, you have to be honest about yourself and then find out if this person is capable of loving who you are. Because even if you're fake, like if you're fake, you're not going to feel like they actually love you for you. You're going to know that they love this version of you. And how long can you actually keep up that version of you? It's not like, it doesn't really last very long. You get tired of being fake. And then a lot of times you hear people saying, actually, I was listening to Chimamanda's speech. I've listened to this speech like 5 to 10 times at this point. It's called We Should All Be Feminists. And she talks about how she has a friend who used to be domesticated when she was dating this guy. And then when she finally got married, her in-laws started saying, oh, this woman has changed, blah, blah, blah. But this woman hadn't changed. Apparently, she was never domesticated. She just wanted to show this version of herself. And she got married and she got tired of acting like she was someone that she's not. So I guess ultimately the point is to be your authentic self. And being your authentic self doesn't mean being rude or being mean or just like being intolerable of people. If that's who your authentic self is, please like do something, you know. But like my point is, you have to be yourself so that you know if the other person is actually going to love you for you, or like, you know, if they won't. And if they don't love you, something that he talks about a lot here is like, if someone doesn't like you, keep it moving. Like, don't be heartbroken. I think I saw a post somewhere that said like, not everyone is for you, or like not everyone is the one. Let's stop grieving for people who are not the one, basically. And I guess that's a whole other topic, but I think that's what this is saying here, basically. Like, dating is not about, oh, is he going to like me? It's a more, and you know, like just that whole idea of like going from one person to another, that sounds so tedious. Like, it's just so much work. And so why would you want to put yourself in that situation, you know? And I guess also like, why do you want to act like you're something that you're not in front of someone who you don't actually technically care about yet. Like, I think it's more important to be who you are and to show who you are, and then like move on from there, because like, you know, anyway. So the next thing he does is he gives us a little bit of like first date tips, and the first one is keep the cost down. So he says like, make sure you're not going to like an expensive place, especially if you're not the kind of person to go to an expensive place. Like, why would you want to go to this expensive place for this one date? You don't even know the person, you know. Like, we have this idea of keeping up pace and like putting our best foot forward, and I feel like actually that's talked about in chapter 4 or chapter 5, I don't know, but he talks about the idea of putting your best foot forward. Like, of course you want to put your best foot forward, but I think also like you have to just like, you know, keep the cost down. That was the point. I don't want to digress. The second tip is keep it short. So don't do like a weekend or something like that. He basically says like, make sure it's like an afternoon, so go for lunch, right? Like, that's just go for lunch, because the thing with lunch is like it ends. Dinner is more vague, so lunch is, it's good. Like, you're like, we're gonna meet from 2 to 4 and then we're done, which is so much easier as a first date. You know what's interesting is I feel like even me meeting my friend, I have a friend who, like, I just made a friend like last year, and when we were going to meet, we did like a lunch, and it was actually really nice, because it was like, oh, I have this thing in the morning, so I did stuff in the morning, then we met for lunch, and then after lunch I came back home and I had other stuff to do, and so did she. So it was so nice to just like do that, and I really love applying all these tips that he gives to like friendships and family relationships and things like that, because I feel like we really do talk about relationships so much, and they are given so much importance, and I think they are important, but I also think your relationship with your family and your friends and your ability to make friends is also so important. Personally, that's just what I think, honestly. And the third tip is keep it public. So make sure you're going to a public place. Don't be out here going to someone's house on the first date, like, come on. And the fourth thing is keep it casual. So just not some fancy stuff, honestly. Like, I think that's the best thing to do. So the next thing is when to talk about your past. And the author basically says, if you can see the possibility of a long-term relationship with this person, then tell them about your past. So definitely not like the first time that you're meeting. You can't necessarily like be like, oh, this is how my past looked like, this is what I did, this is blah 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 on the first date. Like, that's a bit crazy. So I mean, of course, I feel like earlier on is much better than like 6 months in, but as well, not like the first day. You know, you have to be a little bit careful. So yeah, that's all on chapter 6. The idea was like, you know, about dating, when to date, how to date, things like that. There's a lot of tips that are given in chapter 4 as well. A lot like questions to ask on your first date, or like just questions to ask early on in the relationship to get to know the person, just because you don't want to be out here with someone for 6 months and then you find out some in-depth things in like 6 months in, and you're just like, okay, I don't know what to do here. Like, you're so invested already and stuff like that. So anyway, yeah, the idea is make sure you have enough real love in your life so that you can be able to date someone healthy. And there's a bunch of stories that are told actually in this whole book about women and men basically discovering the idea of real love and reaching a place where they're like, oh, this idea of real love is actually really, really good, and it's something that I would like to, you know, sort of like figure out how to, you know, go with it. So I highly recommend that you watch those other chapters. I talk a lot about real love and what that means, and I feel like this book really helped me in the past year, because now I'm done with the book, and of course I haven't yet done all the chapter reviews, so I'm just trying to do all of them and then like get them out. But now I'm done with the book, and this book has been so beneficial to me, and honestly it could not have come at a better time. Like, I just feel like it really came when I needed it, and I'm glad, and I feel like I'm gonna read it again also. But yeah, so I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please give it a thumbs up, and I'll see you next time. Bye.